The chickens were coming home to roost. Life was hard for many people. The national debt had risen to a point that it could not realistically be paid back. The war had cost more than expected. There was high unemployment, products and services increased in price, and production had decreased significantly. The government acted, providing liquidity to banks and inflating the currency. Having left the gold standard, uncertainty loomed and the country's economy began to spiral out of control. Sound familiar? This was Germany in 1920. The Weimar Germany hyperinflation story is by far the most famous. Near the start of World War I, the week after Germany mobilized for war, they severed the link between their currency and gold. The gold mark was now just a paper mark. Almost 5 years of bloody war ensued, and Germany spent the equivalent of roughly $40 billion on the war. That amount now is equal to $860 billion. On top of the costs of war, in 1919, the Treaty of Versailles assigned the blame to Germany, requiring that war reparation payments be made to Britain and France. The similarities between Weimar Germany and America today are eerie. In 1911, a national health insurance scheme was initiated by a reforming liberal government. Sound familiar? A German welfare association was founded in 1920. War victims' benefits were added then, and in 1922, the Youth Welfare Act was passed. Regular unemployment relief assistance was consolidated in 1923. Production had collapsed in Germany due to the war ending, as well as the workers' strike during the French occupation of the Rhine. By the same token, United States production, namely manufacturing, has fallen tremendously in recent decades. Fast forward 100 years in time. The U.S. Congressional Budget Office estimates that the U.S. will have spent $1.9 trillion by 2017 in paying for the Iraq War alone. This is double the amount Germany spent during World War I. The Vietnam War was only half the cost in comparison, but right in the middle of that war, 1971, the U.S. was taken off the gold standard and couldn't afford to pay for the war without creating new money. We all know what happened by 1980. Dollars rushed into the hard assets, gold and silver, and their prices ballooned as the public panicked to retain and gain wealth. Back to today. U.S. official national debt has nearly tripled in the last 12 years. The money to fund our deficits has been borrowed or printed from thin air. During World War I, the German money supply quadrupled. It then took just 5 years before hyperinflation set in. The U.S. money supply, M1 and M2, have almost doubled over the duration of the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. The amount of dollars increased from roughly $5 trillion to $10 trillion for the M2 money supply. Germany's budget deficit for the last year of World War I equaled 34% of their budget. Interestingly, the budget deficit for the U.S. in 2012 was 35% of the total budget. Both Weimar Germany and America today have maintained low interest rates. Credit was easy to attain, increasing the inflation boosted by speculators and businessmen. Germany kept the same bank interest rate of 5% from the start of the war through 1922, only raising it after hyperinflation was there to stay. Inflation simmered for 3 years before surging into hyperinflation. From December 1918 through 1921, bread had increased from half a mark to 4 marks. Perhaps it should be said that it only increased to 4 marks because in just 1 year, by December 1922, the price skyrocketed to 163 marks for 1 loaf of bread. By March 1923, it was 463 marks and hyperinflation kicked in, tripling the price in 3 months. Then, in just 2 months, it shot up nearly 50 times to 69,000 marks for a loaf of bread in August 1923. By November that same year, bread was 201 billion marks. Could America be in the start of inflation preceding hyperinflation? Corn, as one example, tripled in price over the last 6 years. There are many other glaring similarities between Germany then and the U.S. today. The German central bank, the Reich, was founded in 1876. The U.S. Federal Reserve was founded in 1913. The German currency was decoupled from gold in 1914, the U.S. dollar in 1971. In 1919, Germany's debt was 133% of GDP, a number the USA will soon reach if it continues along the current path. That's not even including unfunded liabilities. The purchase of government bonds by the central bank at yields lower than the rate of inflation may be the spark that causes people to lose faith in the US dollar, moving them to dump the currency, creating the inflection point at which more and more people dump their dollars until its perceived value finally reaches its actual value, which will soon amount to no more than the paper it's printed on. Hyperinflation has occurred in Angola, Argentina, Austria, Belarus, Bolivia, Bosnia, Brazil, Bulgaria, China, Georgia, Germany, Greece, Hungary twice, Israel, Crimea, Mexico, Nicaragua, Peru, the Philippines, Poland twice, Romania, Taiwan, Ukraine, United States, Yugoslavia, Zaire, Zimbabwe, just to name a few. You may have noticed that the United States is in that list. In fact, the United States has suffered hyperinflation twice. Perhaps you've heard the expression used during the American Revolution, not worth a continental. And again during the Civil War when the Confederate notes became worthless. The US dollar index has fallen from 100 to 80 over the last 10 years. The only thing keeping the dollar afloat is a military bravado that keeps countries of the world inclined to use the dollar as a reserve currency. If that changes, along with increasing deficits and diminishing public support for military interventions, we may see German-style hyperinflation in the United States of America.